Heyo, John Lee Dumas here of Entrepreneur on Fire, the #1 business podcast, and you are listening to the How to Quit Working show by Jeff Steinman, where you'll hear insights, stories, and inspiration from successful entrepreneurs who quit their job and started a business. Prepare to ignite.
This is the How to Quit Working show. Jeff Steinman believes entrepreneurship is the only true path to freedom. That's why he created the How to Quit Working show, where you'll hear stories, insights, and inspiration from lifestyle fanatics who left their soul-sucking 9-to-5 job forever. Now, here's your host, author, entrepreneur, and ultimate lifestyle fanatic, Jeff Steinman.
Hello and welcome to the How to Quit Working show. A little bit of a different show today. You know, one of the things that I was kind of inspired over the weekend to talk about and really wanted to make it happen is this whole idea of if you want to quit your job and start a business, there's two sides of it. You know, there's one side of it that is all about how to start a business and how to identify a product or a service that people want and how to get in front of those people. But then there's this, and that's what we talk about on the How to Quit Working show all the time. But then there's this other side of it. And the other side of it is just as important as the starting a business side. Now, we're going to talk a lot about that. And really what that other side is structuring your life and building your life in a way that it is compatible with starting a business. And that is just, it's super, super key. A lot of my guests on the show have talked a little bit about it, but I wanted to today just dive into it further and deeper and really talk in a lot more detail about this whole concept of how do you structure your life, design your life in such a way that it is compatible to building a business while you're still working. I'm going to give you some examples of things that I've done that have worked well for me, and probably I'll talk about some things that haven't worked so well for me. But anyway, so before we jump into that, I want to make sure that everybody knows Heather, the How to Quit Working coach, is up and running. She is open for business, and she has had some conversations already with folks who are interested in her coaching, and I'm so excited about what she is going to be bringing to the table here. Again, if you didn't listen to the episode with Heather, go to howtoquitworking.com/Heather and get all the information about Heather and the coaching that she is offering here for How to Quit Working folks. If you also would like to talk to Heather about coaching, give her an email or send her an email at heather@howtoquitworking.com, and she would love to talk to you. She's very excited and passionate about what she's doing, and I wanted to make sure that everybody is fully aware that, yeah, we are open for business. How to Quit Working is open for coaching business. We are ready to roll up our sleeves and work with you right there side by side and help you quit your job and start a business. So reach out to Heather at howtoquitworking.com. Go to her page, which is howtoquitworking.com/Heather, and get in touch with her and see what we can do for you and if working with Heather is a fit. Now, the other thing that you can do, if that's not something that you're ready for, go over to the How to Quit Working group on Facebook. Just go to howtoquitworking.com/group, and then you will be sent right over to the How to Quit Working group on Facebook. And then all you got to do is click on Join Group. It's really simple. You just click the button, Join Group, and then we get your request approved very, very quickly, usually within a couple of hours. Your request will be approved, and you will be in the conversation. You'll be talking to other people just like you who are working on quitting their jobs and starting a business. And you're going to have a blast. We had a great conversation in that group just this morning. A guy who's already made some phone calls and seeing some really great results. Look forward to maybe having him on the show to talk about the really cool stuff that he's got going on as he's building up his freelancing business. All right, now let's jump into the topic for today, and that's about structuring your life and building your life in such a way that it's compatible to starting a business. I have a lot of big ideas, and I won't get into those here because they're off topic for the show, and I would talk for like hours and hours and hours about them. But I've got some big ideas about the way that we sort of, as I like to say, do life, right? The way that we go about life. And I think there's some things that are common in our society, and this isn't just in the US, these things are pretty similar across the world. There's some things that we do that I don't think make sense. And one of the examples of that is, and I'll keep it to an example to keep from, going off on getting on my soapbox and talking about all kinds of crazy stuff. But the biggest example of that is kind of this idea that the first big rite of passage, or one of the first big rites of passage in life, is to buy a house. There's this idea that after you get through college that you should go out there and you should buy a house. And, and I think the way that we approach that in this world doesn't make a lot of sense. And that's one of the specific things that I think there's a lot of opportunity to approach in a different way that would make folks be able to have a more successful life financially than taking that whole concept of just thinking that as soon as you get out of college, as soon as you get a job, you got to go buy a house and you got to go spend more money than you've ever spent in your entire life on something like a house. Now, there's nothing wrong with home ownership. I actually happen to love home ownership. And we're going to talk a little bit more about my personal story and my experience with this. But there's nothing wrong with it. But I think the real question that we have to ask ourselves in this world is that the right time? When you have just finished college, maybe you're getting married, maybe you're getting ready to start a family, usually buying a vehicle around that time. Is that really the right time to invest in a home, which is, the largest purchase that many people will make? We tend to make that largest purchase when we are literally probably the poorest that we'll be in our entire life. So that's sort of one example of how you really have to step back and look at what are your priorities in life. If your priority in life. Now, we've got folks of all ages that listen to this show. We've got folks in their early 20s. We've got folks in their 60s. So everybody has a different perspective and a different life situation that they can apply this information to. But when you're that young person, right, when you're just out of college, or maybe you didn't go to college, maybe you're just out of high school, but you're in maybe your early to mid 20s, and you're starting to figure out, okay, what am I really going to do with my life here? Because that's the big question that we all kind of ask after college is, what the heck am I going to do here? What we tend to do is we tend to go down this normal path, right? This path of here's what everyone else does, and here's what I'm told I'm supposed to do. So I guess that's what I should do. And we don't even have that thought process, right? That thought process that I just sort of walked through. We don't have that thought process. We just do it, right? We just do these things because we're just conditioned to believe that they're the thing to do. But what happens is we go out and we buy that house, we buy that car, we do all of these things. And of course we have to have money to support ourselves. So we go out and get a job, because that is a very quick way to get money rolling in the door. This is the How to Quit Working show, but I won't pull any punches and say, hey, if I needed to get a certain amount of money rolling in the door tomorrow and I had to, well, getting a job would be a pretty quick way to do it. And it's also what we're conditioned to jump to. Having a good job in and of itself, regardless of the income that it provides, is sort of in our society, in our world, the definition of being successful, and the definition of doing the right thing. So we tend, young kids go down that path in their 20s. They go down that path of buying that house, and then they need the money, right? They need the money to pay the mortgage. They're already going down the job path. So the job becomes something that you're very dependent upon to make the mortgage because you don't want to get your home foreclosed on because there's a huge stigma around that. Now, certainly less so these days because it's happened to so many people in the last 5 to 7 years, but that certainly is not something that you want to have happen. So it creates this sort of snowball effect of, I'm doing this because everybody says I need to do this, and I'm doing that because it supports this other thing that everybody else says I need to do. And you really get this momentum that's built up. And, I try to be really sensitive to the fact that we have listeners of very wide range of ages on the show. So the younger folks out there, I hope that you're identifying this pattern maybe before you're getting into it. And then the older folks on the call, who I identify with more, I hope you're also kind of looking back and thinking back to, this is what I did, and this is why I did it, and this is where that's left me now. So we get into this pattern, and it's a pattern that makes it really tough to pull away from that job. It makes it really tough to pull away from that 9-to-5 job that you then need to pay the car note, to pay the mortgage, to pay for all the other things that you've got going on, to pay for your kids' education, and to put food on the table for those people that depend on you. So we get into this pattern where we've got this kind of snowball thing going on, and what happens is it makes it really difficult to do anything different. And what I want to talk about today is kind of some different ideas for maybe how you can kind of pull away from that whole thing. Now, I don't ever want to be the guy that says, quit working. It's easy. You can, there's no sacrifice involved. It's not hard. And I don't want to be the guy that says that because there's a lot of work involved in quitting your job and starting a business. And I also don't want to paint a completely rosy picture about it all the time. There's parts of it that are really tough, and it involves sacrifice. And, the sacrifice comes when you realize that what you're going towards is better than what you have now. And sometimes you have to make sacrifice for the thing that you're moving towards. And I think one of those sacrifices that is important to make is in the arena of home ownership. And I'd like to sort of frame up a different way to think about it and a different way to look at it. There's something, if we handled it differently, we could actually turn home ownership from something that is a shackle for us, something that really holds us down. And I would challenge those of you who are homeowners and who aspire to quit your job and start a business. I would challenge you to really step back and look at if you're a homeowner, how does that home ownership really affect your ability to quit your job and start a business? Is that something that really is kind of tying you down? If nothing else, you got to mow the grass, and that's just taking up time, right? So what I want to talk about is a different way to approach this. And this is one of those things, I certainly don't ever want to say that I have regrets about life because I'm perfectly happy with where I have landed in life. But that doesn't mean that if all of a sudden I was 22 again, I would do things exactly the same way that I did. I would certainly use the things that I've learned and use the knowledge to build a better life. And I want to talk a little bit about what I would do differently. The thing that I would absolutely do differently out of the gate, and I think that this is really a better paradigm for how to do life for young people, not have purchased a home as early in life as I did. I believe I was 24 or 25 when I bought my first house, and maybe I was 26. It's all kind of fuzzy. But I was somewhere in my mid-20s, and I was having that entrepreneurial itch around that time. That's when it was really starting to kind of manifest itself, and it was starting to become something that was serious enough that I had to pay attention to. And I started having kind of these ideas about businesses that I wanted to start. I started even moving forward on a few of them in a way that, in retrospect was really pathetic and not right, and all kinds of problems with that. But that's okay. I was young. I was learning. But what happened was I really kind of I made a semi-conscious decision, because I was in a situation where I already had that entrepreneurial bug. And I think a lot of people, it's much later in life before they discover that. But because I had that, I realized that I was making a pretty conscious decision that by buying this house and by going down this road that I was going down, I was making the decision that I was probably making entrepreneurship harder for myself, right? Because I now had this mortgage, and I had kind of all that stuff that went along with it. The desire, then you gotta improve the house, and you gotta buy furniture for it, and kind of all that stuff, all that expense that was building up. The thing that's interesting is, when I look back, what would have served my entrepreneurial pursuits in a much better way would be to have, instead of purchasing the house to live in, the house that I would just pay the mortgage, pay the utilities, and just flush all that money down the toilet, what I should have done is I should have bought a multifamily unit. Now, here in St. Louis, we have a lot of two families, and typically it's like one apartment downstairs and one apartment upstairs. There's also side-by-side duplexes, where there's one building with two apartments in it. I have a lot of 4-family properties around here, and what would have served my entrepreneurial spirit much better would have been to purchase one of those properties, because what you can do with that is, when you've got 2 units, you can live in one, and you can then rent the other one out. And depending on the area and how much you pay and how much rent comes in and the condition of the building, it's quite doable to find a situation where the rent from the tenant actually pays the entire mortgage. Now, it's very, very doable, and people do it all the time. In fact, the thing that's different about this show is I decided to do this for a number of reasons. One of them was convenience, because of the stuff that I had going on today. But I decided to do this show from my kitchen here at my apartment. And what happened about 18 months ago is I made a decision. Now, that first house that I bought, I had upgraded that once and was in a much larger house, a much more expensive house, a much more high maintenance house. I was in that house, and as I was really looking to grow my business and take things to the next level, this is after I had already quit my job, I was looking at, okay, kind of what is really holding me back? What is really stopping me from being able to make the decisions that I want to make and being able to take the risks that I want to take? And what I found was that the house was a really big part of it. The house and the fear of losing the house, the fear of the house getting foreclosed, the repairs that were needed on the house. I found that because again, this is no secret, I look at entrepreneurship as a vehicle for creating life, right? Not so much as a means in and of itself. While it can be, it's about creating life. And what I found was that when I had this thing in my life that I was having to make decisions based upon this thing, this house, it was limiting my ability to be successful in my business, because I had to put that thing first. So fortunately, prior to that, a couple years prior to that, before I quit working, I had purchased a 4-family rental property. And so this is 4 units in this building. There is 4 apartments, 2 one on top of the other, 2 side by side. So the decision that I made was to move out of the house and sell that and move into one of the units in my apartment building. And what that has allowed for me is, number one, it's a huge financial burden off, right? So I now get to, it's amazing actually how much more of my focus goes into the business as opposed to into the house, and the energy that's taken by maintaining the house. And it's also allowed me to really kind of have this freedom of understanding that, I'm not going to be homeless. Right. And I know that's something, it sounds like an extreme fear, but I know on some level that's running through your head as you're thinking about quitting a job and starting your business. You're thinking, okay, what if I quit my job? And what if the business doesn't work? And what if, I can't pay the bills? And what if I end up getting kicked out of my place? And on and on and on and on and on. And you're thinking those things, even though you're not consciously probably worried about being homeless. Somewhere in the back of your head, that neuron is firing and that thought is going through your head. So what I've done in this situation is I've created a situation where this building creates positive cash flow even when I'm living here. So even when I'm living here and not paying rent, only 3 of the 4 units are rented, I am actually making positive cash flow from this place. Now, that sounds nice, right? It's like, okay, Jeff, you don't have a mortgage, you don't have to pay rent, and you make money every month. Well, yeah, that is nice. But here's the reality of it. That's not the best part of it. That's not the best part of it. The best part of it is that I get to decision my business, and I get to make decisions in my business that are much less fear-based, because I've removed that whole homelessness idea from the equation. There's no worry about, well, what if I get kicked out and I don't have a place to live? Well, the reality of it is I have plenty of friends and family that would let me stay with them, but nobody wants to do that. I've created a situation where I don't have to worry about where I live. I don't have to worry about one of my main basic needs, which is shelter. There's the 5 basic needs, and shelter, a very important one. I've eliminated that from ever having to worry about that ever. Now, I'm not going to live in this building forever, but it will always be there, and that will always be an option, right? So what happens is, when you structure your life in this way and you make these kind of creative decisions, you realize that everything's totally different because options open up. And in so much of business, you've heard my guests talk about this time and time and time again. Taking risks is extremely important in business. You have to be able to take risks. You have to be able to throw some money down, spend some time, do something, create something, whatever it may be. You've got to be able to do things that may not work out. Everything you do in your business will not work out. And sometimes that will cost you money, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. That's part of the process. And one of the reasons that that's so scary for folks is because you've got this little thing in the back of your head, and it's saying, well, what if I lose my house? What if I can't pay my mortgage? What if I end up, on Skid Row because this didn't work out? And that's preventing you from taking the risks and making the decisions that you need to make in order to be successful in your business. So I have pulled that in my personal situation. I have pulled that off the table. That homelessness is not a concern, because I know no matter how poorly my business decision-making ability might be, I have this piece of property here that I can always live in. And it's a fairly decent piece of property. If you're looking at this on YouTube, I'm sitting in the kitchen. You can see a halfway decent kitchen behind me. Now, it's not granite countertops. It's not super fancy, but it suits my needs for the time being, and it works pretty well. So now, I didn't want this to be kind of a show about real estate. I wanted this to be a show about designing your life and structuring things such that you're able to take the risks and do the things that you need to do to make your business successful. So first thing I want to say is, for goodness sakes, for those young people out there that are listening to the show, if you haven't bought that first house yet, whatever you do, Don't go buy some single family house that's just going to cost you money. Wherever you're at, do some research, understand the real estate market, and figure out a way to get yourself into some sort of a multifamily that costs you very little, or better yet, nothing, or even makes you money every month and lets you still have a place to live. Very, very important. And truly, I believe that so many people would be better off if we took a different approach to building our lives when we left our parents' home and went out on our own. And if our approach was one of initially figuring out a way to get your living expenses covered and to not have to worry about how am I going to afford a place to live. I think it's really a tragedy, actually, when you have to go through life with your first decision or the first consideration of every decision has to be, how am I going to get the money I need to live? I don't think that we should have to go through life with that being the first decision that we have to make. Now, I also don't believe that everybody should just be handed a free place to stay, but what I do believe is that there's a solution in there somewhere that we can actually take action on, that you can take action on, that you can be the one that decides, no, I'm not going to go through my life making every decision contingent upon creating a financial situation that allows me to pay mortgage or pay rent somewhere. And you shouldn't have to hold yourself back from the things that you really care about because of that. And here's a really simple way to do that. Now, real estate is different in every market. This arrangement is more feasible in some markets than it is in other markets. But certainly you can figure out a situation that is better for you than just having to pay rent to someone or having to pay a mortgage on a single family house. So that is my point there for you young folks. Don't do it. Don't go buy some big single family house that's going to pull you down and make you have to make every decision in your life dependent on bringing in the money you need for that. Now, for those of you who are already in a house, those of you who are already established and you have families, I'd ask you to maybe look at your living situation. Look at, does it make sense to do something different? You can do this kind of thing with a family. There's families that live in this building here with me that rent. So there's a lot of things that you can do. There's plenty of options. You've got to get really creative about what you do. And it's not only about, it's not only about buying real estate and getting your monthly expenses covered, your monthly living expenses covered by a piece of real estate. It's also about like stepping back and just looking creatively at your situation as a whole. Maybe you have a couple of kids and maybe you own a house and maybe you're not real comfortable with the idea of moving out or moving those kids into a multifamily building. Maybe there's some other creative options out there, right? Maybe there's a grandparent who would like to move in and help out with the living expenses and help out by taking care of the kids in the evening so that you can have more time to work on your business, or cover save the babysitting expense, or like I said, help out with the utilities or help out with the mortgage. I mean, think about like different cultures have different ideas about how to live. Look at other cultures for cues as to different arrangements that might be helpful. And I'm not suggesting everybody should move their mother-in-law in with them to take care of the kids so that they can work on their business. I'm not making that blanket suggestion. What I'm doing is I'm just trying to throw out some creative ideas for different ways to look at structuring your life. And I hope that the ideas that I'm throwing out there are creative. Are creative enough that they're really kind of pushing you outside your comfort zone and making you maybe a little bit uncomfortable. But, it's really about stepping back and looking at what are some different ways that we could approach this? What are some different, really out of the box? I hate that annoying euphemism of out of the box, but it kind of works here, right? What are some different ways that we could look at structuring our life that would make it more compatible to doing the things that we really want to do, to being able to make better business decisions and so on. Now, for example, Julie Boucher, she is the inventor of Slossa, and she was on the show probably 2 or 3 months ago. If you search for BUSHA on the site, you will find her episode. Now, she has made a lot of really serious sacrifices. I mean, she hasn't taken a salary from her company in, I think it's like 7 years. She talks about it on the show, but it's a very, very long time. And her husband and her have made a lot of really serious financial sacrifices to make Slossa work, because that's her dream, right? She has structured her life around Slossa. It doesn't have to be that extreme. Your situation doesn't have to be that extreme. Look at the extreme on one end of what someone like Julie Boucher does. And I think that's very admirable. And I have a ton of respect for Julie. And I love Julie very much as a person. On the other end of the spectrum, there is all of these folks, which I think is probably like 80% of the population, who is in a situation, working a job, probably paying a mortgage, and in a situation that's just not working for them, in a situation that does not give them the freedom, the flexibility that they want to be able to live their life the way they want to live it and do the things that they want to do. Now, in between those two extremes, there's a whole lot of space. There's a whole lot of space in between those two extremes. There's a whole lot of different things that you can do, different ways that you can structure your life. You can move your mother-in-law in and make her pay rent and take care of the kids. You can move into a multifamily. You can do any number of things. Maybe you just rent out your garage spaces, right? That's one of the things that I've considered doing here is we have 2 garage spaces that actually nobody uses. And I've even investigated, hey, could I get $100 or $200 for them? Now, that's not something I've ever done, but it's about thinking creatively about what you can do, right? So, maybe you have a 2-car garage at home, and maybe there's someone who would like to store their boat in there in one of those spaces for $50 a month. And maybe you would be okay with just parking your car in the driveway or on the street in exchange for that extra income. I'm not suggesting that you should do that or something like that. Don't think of these things that I'm talking about as specifics. They're not specific suggestions or specific recommendations. The idea is to get you to thinking about what are the different unique ways that you can approach structuring your life to be able to build your business and do something different. So this was a little bit different type of a show. I'm looking at, what are the kind of different things that I can do? How can we provide different content? How can we provide different things to you that will help you quit your job and start a business? And I'm working to identify or to find a couple of guests upcoming to really, really roll up their sleeves and candidly talk about the financial implications of quitting your job and starting a business. And I've got about probably 15 or 20 folks who have expressed interest in being on the show and talking very explicitly about how they financially made the transition. And I'm looking forward to doing those interviews. Those are going to be upcoming in the next couple of weeks here. And they're going to be really, really valuable because I'm always trying to dig into what are those things? What are those things? Like, what are those stopping points? What are those things that are bugging you, that are stopping you from quitting your job and starting a business? I listen to all your feedback, and when you send me emails, when you post things in the Facebook group, when we talk on the phone, when I meet you in person, when I have conversations with How to Quit Working folks, everything that you are asking me and everything that you're saying is feedback and what I use to create this show and make it what it is, because you got to tell me what you want and what you need. You do a great job of that, but keep it up. Always feel free to email me, jeff@howtoquitworking.com. Tell me what kind of content you want on this show. Tell me what you need to quit your job and start a business, because that's why you're here. You're not here to listen to me tell funny jokes. You're not here for any other reason than to quit your job and start a business. I'm glad that you're here. Join us over on Facebook, howtoquitworking.com/group. Jump in the conversation and let's talk a little bit more about this in a more intimate setting. Until next time.
Thanks for joining us on the How to Quit Working show. Tune in next time when we'll talk to another amazing person just like you who is now living the ultimate life of freedom and doing it on their terms. If you want to learn how to quit working and get these episodes delivered directly to you, visit howtoquitworkingshow.com.